imagine going to the gym, right? You go to the gym for your normal workout and you finish your first set and then you right? Does that make like...
Yeah, it's actually funny when you look at that.
That's how I think of it.
Yeah, sure.
That's literally how I think of it. This is, for me, yoga was a workout. Yoga continues to be a workout. It's a system of fitness. The spiritual aspects don't even register. So all of that space that we could be using to talk about, and if you had an altercation with someone today, I want you to just breathe and let it go, or whatever typical yoga is, and you would hear. Instead, I'm saying, make sure that your knee is in this position and then squeeze your glutes to make sure that you're using your glutes and supporting your low back. So it's all focused on the physical explanation and what you should be feeling, what you shouldn't be feeling, how this translates into your physical fitness.
On this week's episode of Establishing Your Empire, Dean Pohlman. Dean is the CEO and founder of Man Flow Yoga, as well as a best-selling author. And we sat down to talk about how he got started by simply wanting a different workout for his college teammates, to his unique non-spiritual approach to yoga, to how he created his company, and how he has established his empire. You're listening to the Establishing Your Empire show, a podcast that inspires entrepreneurs, creatives, and future business owners to pursue their passions, grow their organizations, and build their empire. My name is Daran Herrman, and creatively, I'm best known for my photography. But business-wise, my claim to fame is growing a company from $15K per month in online sales to breaking the $1 million a month barrier. And I'm sitting down with interesting people to talk about their process, the lessons they've learned, and how they have established their empires. Hi, Dean, and welcome to the podcast. Really appreciate you coming and being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So why don't you start and give us kind of a background information of who you are, how'd you get here, and what you do?
Sure. So my background is mostly as an athlete. So I played college lacrosse. I played for Team Turkey. Long story, before I even started doing Man Flow Yoga, I was also involved with, I did a lot of stuff with State Department, and I studied international studies and international affairs, and fluent in Turkish and Persian, which is completely unrelated to what I'm about to tell you. But anyways, that was kind of where I was headed professionally. But fitness has always been something that I've always been extremely passionate about. It's something that I've always made time for. It's something that's always been really important to me. And lacrosse was, that was my main sport. And so when I first started yoga, it was within the context of lacrosse. I was curious about and wanted to keep doing yoga because I believed it would make me a better lacrosse player. I thought it would improve my performance. But my story with how I actually started yoga was completely on accident. So one day I was home for winter break. I think I was a senior, and I was home for winter break, and I was going to go to the gym. But before I went to the gym, I was going to go to the tailor. I needed my pants shortened. So I was trying to find the tailor, and I couldn't figure out how to get into this building. And I ended up walking into a yoga studio. So I wandered into a yoga studio, and I'm like, okay, well, I'm dressed up to work out. I've always wanted to do yoga. So I talked with the yoga instructor at the front desk, and I said, here's the deal. I play lacrosse. Was this going to help me? And I was totally broed out. I was wearing my Wisconsin hoodie, my Wisconsin lacrosse hoodie, and my Wisconsin lacrosse pants and everything. And she said, yeah. And I said, okay, whatever. And so I looked around at the people who were also in there, and, it was your typical yoga class. You had mostly women, but a lot of women who were older. And so I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to crush this, like yoga, whatever. And, you get in, and this is Bikram yoga. So Bikram yoga, if you're familiar, it's the 105 degrees, it's 90 minutes. It's the same sequence every time. Of course, I had no idea about this beforehand. I had no idea of what postures we'd be doing or anything.
And for an athlete, that can be really difficult, yoga in general.
Oh, yeah.
Like, and doing that as that being your first class, that's like
yeah,
that's a difficult start.
Right. And I thought that I was like I was kind of like the team workhorse. Like I was the guy, I ran the conditioning sessions and I was the guy who would clear the ball, and mostly you would rely on me. If you needed some sort of sprinting to be done, that was kind of my job. And so I was in really good shape in at least certain regards. And so I was thinking, okay, I'm going to crush this workout. Like it's going to be, whatever. I'm going to show all these people like what I can do. And 15 minutes in, I was exhausted because we were doing all these exercises that I had never done before. They were totally new to my body. And so I was working muscles that I, didn't really know about or kind of forgotten about. And we were working on aspects of fitness that I didn't ever train. Right. So you don't really, if you're following a typical athletic program, you're doing strength training, you're doing endurance training, you're doing, sport specific training, obviously practicing the sport. But you don't do a lot of what we were doing in yoga, which is isometric exercises, holding things. In other words, so something like a plank or holding a lunge or holding a squat, and flexibility work. You don't really do flexibility unless you're doing some stretching. But even when you're stretching, you're just kind of looking out at the field and you're not really involved in it. You're just like stretching because we have to. Like
Yeah, and it's the same stretch every time. So it's not like, we're jumping with yoga. It's all over the place. It's not just, I'm stretching my shoulder and then you're done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So anyway, so that my whole, so the whole first workout, that workout was just incredibly challenging. And halfway through, they're like, okay, we're halfway done. I was like, you're kidding me. We're only halfway done. Like I'm already spent. Like, I don't know how much more I can do. And so I eventually finished the workout, and that sold me. I was sold on the challenge of that workout. Intuitively, even back then, I kind of knew that I don't think I consciously knew this, but intuitively I knew that if I could do things that challenged me, that was going to make me stronger, especially in fitness. And so I kept going back, and I think I went back 4 or 5 times that week. And then eventually within a month, I was going to yoga classes almost every day. And at the time I was still playing lacrosse. And so I started teaching my lacrosse team yoga because I was running the conditioning sessions. So, my thought was these workouts are great. Like these exercises are helping me feel stronger. I feel more in control of my body. I have more flexibility, and that makes it easier to do, certain movements like weightlifting got easier. And so I'm like, okay, well, so first I invited my lacrosse team, like, hey, you guys need to like come to the yoga studio with me. They're like, no.
Yeah, I was going to say, how did they respond to that?
No. Yeah, they were like, absolutely not. And keep in mind, this is 2012. This is 2011. And the atmosphere around yoga back then was a lot different. It wasn't really in the public eye as much, nowhere near as much as it is today. And even today, like if you go into a yoga class in any major city or metropolitan area, you're going to get an even spread of men and women. But back then, when you went to a yoga class, you were the one or the two guys. There weren't that many men in there, and there was no really public discussion on yoga for guys working out. Just really wasn't, it wasn't a thing yet. And so I was trying to get these guys who are, like me, 21, 20, 19 years old, insecure men, trying to go to, I was too, but, trying to go to, the only reason that I went was because I stumbled in there on accident. I wouldn't have gone on my own.
Yeah, that's interesting because you almost made it sound like you thought yoga would help you. Was there any thought process behind that? Or is that something just where you were just looking for anything?
I have no clue why I thought that yoga was going to be helpful. I really don't.
I remember, being in college and, and going to a yoga class, just somebody invited me and I finally went. And, I went because I was like, okay, well, maybe flexibility. I never really thought of it. And this is a long time. It's not 2011. It's probably more 2002. But, no idea of performance with yoga, especially, and we've come a long way. I think there's a long way to go, obviously. But, I only thought of it in flexibility terms for a long time. But then you go, oh, this is difficult.
Yeah.
As like somebody who only weightlifts a lot, right?
Right.
And because the flexibility is the opposite of weightlifting almost because you're tightening, right?
Yeah. Yeah, so it's just something that you don't, with weightlifting and with other types of fitness, what you're pushing is your strength or your endurance. You're not pushing range of motion. So in yoga, a lot of the emphasis is how can I get deeper into this position while maintaining proper technique? So it's just a different type of fitness, and there is a lot of strength involved. Um, in yoga just because you're holding it for a longer time and you're holding it in positions where your body's not used to it. So you just don't have the strength in that position yet. Um, so you're basically just working a lot of different aspects of fitness that you wouldn't get in your other workouts.
So then, did you get some of your lacrosse teammates to start joining you, or how did that continue that story?
I got one or two guys to come with me. And so when I realized the team wasn't like other people weren't going to come, I said, I'm the conditioning coach. I'll just make you guys do it. So we would, I think we had conditioning sessions like Tuesdays and Thursdays. And on one of those days, we would go to the natatorium. That's what it was called, our rec center. And we would wait for someone to leave a basketball court, and we'd run on and we secure the court for ourselves, and we do yoga. And I remember the first couple of weeks after doing that, we got a shout out in our student newspaper. There's like a shout out and an anti shout out section. And I remember we got a shout out from someone that said like, shout out to the men's lacrosse team for doing yoga in the natatorium. Ow, ow. I was like, yeah, that was cool. But yeah, so that was how I got them to start doing it. And, a lot of guys were skeptical at first, but at the end of it, once we actually did all the exercises, and I even had them get in, corpse pose at the end and like just lay down on the floor and take a nap. And then we finished, and everyone except one guy was not into it, but almost everyone was, they loved it. And they're like, can we do that every time? Or can you, I think I even had a couple guys jokingly said, hey, I need you to do that and help me go to sleep at night.
Right. Sure.
But yeah, that's how it started. And then I decided I would record videos and put them up on YouTube so that they could continue to do yoga while they were on winter break. So that was how I first started recording videos. I was like, the goal was I'm going to record some videos in my office at home, or my mom's office at that time. And I'll just upload them to YouTube, share them with the team via the email list. And that was how I started making videos.
So that's interesting, because one of the first questions I usually ask is like, how did you start, taking your idea and becoming a business? So yours sounds like that's already starting to happen organically. You're just trying to help provide value to your teammates, to your friends. So walk me through from college. Then you said you played in Turkey. Mm-hmm. So how that, did you continue your yoga journey there, or like give me that story.
So my Turkey story started with my high school girlfriend, who was Turkish, and she would speak Turkish with her family when she didn't want me to understand. So I started learning Turkish, and then I ended up learning it in college, and that opened up a lot of doorways for me in college. I got accepted to what was called a critical language scholarship, and I was able to go study in Ankara in Turkey for 3 months, with totally paid, with an immersion program through the State Department. And then a few months after that, I went back and I studied in Istanbul as an exchange student. And then a few months after that, I went back and I worked at the U.S. Embassy in Turkey as a cultural affairs assistant. So that was kind of my Turkey journey, and Turkey journey sounds weird.
I mean, I'm listening to this and I'm like, man, I think I should learn a unique language, or should have in college, because if you go learn Spanish, there's a lot of benefits, but learn Turkish. I mean, look what you're able to do, because there's not that many people probably that knew it.
Yeah. There's also no uses for it in the United States, but yeah, it was cool to do something that was unique. And I was doing all that because my goal was I want to work with like a 3-letter agency, or I want to get into government somehow. And I actually started college in an Army ROTC program. So I had a 4-year scholarship to, completely paid to go to Wisconsin and do Army ROTC. And I went to airborne training my first summer. So after my first year, I had really high physical training scores, and I had good grades. So they looked at me and they said, "Oh, this guy's a smart guy. He's very fit. He's dedicated to the program. We're going to send you to airborne training." So that summer, I went to airborne training in Fort Benning, which was my first real Army experience. And I got to jump out of planes. I lived the Army lifestyle to some extent. Um, and at the end of it, I realized that I did not want to do this at all. So that ended that little journey. But I was still committed to. I still had an idea of professionally. I wanted to somehow work as an intermediary between the United States and Turkey. Um, and then 2012 happened, and sequestration was in full effect. There was a freeze on hiring anybody in the federal government for the most part, unless it was, deemed critical to security. And so there were no opportunities. And so I started looking elsewhere. And wow, I feel like we're going all over the place. We're gonna need
That's all. I know. I like it a lot.
we're gonna need like
Actually,
a visual aid
yeah.
that like shows
Well,
this Candyland course.
Well, what I like, there's no straight path, right? Obviously, for almost anybody. And I think it all makes sense. So you're kind of figuring out your life a little bit, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Well, you're bouncing around a little bit. So at what point did you decide, okay, I'm going to run my own company, start a company, join a company? Like, when did you say, okay, like I'm going to go on my own here?
Yeah. So all of that other stuff, wherever it got me to, I ended up getting a job in Austin, Texas. And at the time, I had never been to Texas. I didn't know anybody in Texas. I had been applying to jobs in Madison, Chicago, and New York. And nothing was happening. I don't think I even got like follow up. And I had a pretty good resume, fluent in 3 languages, graduated with honors, 3 different majors, lots of experience, but nothing. But I did get an interview in Austin. Someone recommended I apply to jobs in Austin. So I interviewed. They hired me. I said, fine, I guess I'm moving to Austin, Texas. I moved down here, and I was working in third-party logistics, which is basically just cold calling companies that utilize trucks, that utilize carrier services, and saying, can you pay me more money than you pay the truck driver so I can help you get this from point A to point B and also make money in the process? That was my interpretation of that.
I have a lot of experience with 3PLs, but
Yeah.
it is true. But also you can add services to the.
You absolutely can.
that. But, it is more expensive typically. And most people, anyway, that's a whole different world.
Yeah, it was. It just wasn't. I didn't see the value in it, and so after about 6 months of that, they had a very strict. You got to make this amount of money by 6 months in, or you're out. And I was about a week away from that, and rather than stay on and keep doing it, I ended up quitting, and I had another job, but that offer fell through. So I had been interviewing, had another job offer that fell through. And so I was, here I am, I'm 23. I have this Facebook page. So at the time I had been also doing, putting out videos still and having a Facebook page and some stuff, a very minimal website. And so I looked at my options like, well, I could use this very minimal experience to go apply for another sales job, or I could try and do this manful of yoga thing. If I can get 2 customers a day, I'm going to be basically making the same amount of money that I was doing my sales job. And so I called my parents and I said, here's the deal. Like I right now, here's what I have. I have really no job opportunities. I could apply to something. I could go for a job search, or I could try doing this yoga thing. And I had also looked at working with a moving company, and I actually got a part-time job with a moving company. So I was doing part-time moving and I was doing yoga. And I talked with my dad, and I think at the time I was really concerned. For some reason, I had never, and this is probably the experience with a lot of people. I think especially in the United States, but I think it's really common elsewhere too, is you go to school, right? You specialize, and then you get a job based on what you've learned. and you work with a company, you get insurance, you get your benefits, and that's what you do. There is no, thinking about starting my own company and doing this on my own was not an option, or just making enough money was an
Right.
option. It was like you had to have a respectable career.
Right. And a lot of people don't, you didn't realize that you're 23. Like, this is the
Mhm.
time to do stuff. It's so much easier to do it. And you already had a little foundation. One question I do have at this time, were you doing any like traditional yoga studio classes or anything like that, or just your videos online,
I was going to yoga classes on
but
my
not
own,
teaching?
but I wasn't teaching. I think I had, when did I start? I had a teaching gig. I remember my first class that I taught, which we'll get into it in a second. But that,
Which,
I want to kind of finish up the, so anyways, I had like
yeah.
these, and I basically I was asking my parents for permission. Hey, is it okay if I make enough money to pay for myself, even if it's not a real career? And they were like, yeah, that's fine. Just as long as you can pay yourself. I'm like, great, cool. So I started moving, and I started trying to build this brand. And that was when I started calling gyms and saying, hey, I've got this Facebook page and a YouTube channel. I'd love to teach classes at your gym. So that was how I started getting gigs. I just called every gym that I could, followed up with the people who were dumb enough to respond, or not dumb enough to respond, but who were nice enough to respond, open enough to respond to me.
Yeah. And you already had the name Manflow Yoga at this time?
Yeah.
Or, okay. Which I think is very interesting insight, as opposed to just your own name as the brand. You had a kind of
Right.
this other full out brand name. That way you could enhance that brand and market it,
Mm-hmm.
which would be great in case you needed to duplicate or scale and it not be just you, right?
Yeah. And at the time when I initially called it Bro Flow Yoga, because I was looking on GoDaddy.com. I'm like, there's got to be a Bro Flow Yoga. Like, the yoga has to be popular enough that someone made Bro Flow Yoga. It wasn't. No one made Bro Flow Yoga. So I said, okay, I'm gonna make Bro Flow Yoga. And so I did that, and then I sent an email to Broga, which is like a kind of a more well established yoga for men brand. And I said, hey guys, I made this thing called Bro Flow Yoga. And they sent me a very, very nice cease and desist. Like, not like an official. They just said, hey Dean, like, this is really cool, and we'd actually love for you to work with us and do our teacher training. But would you mind changing the name? And my response was, okay, fine, yeah. I'll just call it Manflow Yoga instead.
Yeah.
And it's kind of funny that you mentioned the whole brand thing dissociated from the name, because people would send me messages, and they would try to like, they were trying to interact with me personally.
Mhm.
Like, they're like, hey, where do you live? I'm like, well, I'm a brand. I live on the internet. Like, I was trying to
Yeah.
answer in third person.
Mhm.
And eventually we realized that, yeah, the brand is intriguing, but what really keeps people was that it was me doing it. It wasn't because, it was called Manful Yoga that might have gotten people in the door or gotten them to take a second look, but it was me that was keeping people, involved.
Was there any inflection point to where you're like, okay, this is really going to work? I don't need to go find another job, or like, to walk me through that kind of path?
Yeah. So about 4 or 5 months after I decided to do things on my own, this was 4 months after I created the LLC, and I was also working part-time with that moving company. I, I, I got a client who was going to work with me 3 times per week. And that was enough for me to, oh, wow, okay, 3 times per week, that times that. Okay, this is like enough. And I had a dirt cheap living style. I think I was spending $1,500 a month. My apartment was $675 a month, splitting it with another guy. And yeah, I was cheap. Like, I just
Love
didn't,
it.
I didn't have a lot of expenses. So as long as I could keep it that low, then, that was it. As long as I had enough money to go out and go to the bars.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was pretty much all my money went into rent, food, and bars, which I'm pretty sure is what most people.
Yeah, especially at that age. Yeah, completely. And especially in Austin, Texas, because it's always a good time here.
Yeah.
I love it. I love that you also, you're like, okay, if I just do 2 people a week or whatever it would be, because if you ever said we were trying to get a loan at a bank, a lot of times the first question they'll ask you is, what's your break even point? How many customers do you need a day, an hour, or whatever it might be to break even? And sometimes it's not as much as you think, right? Just a few. Now that you might not get rich off of that, but to walk me through your company of how you make money, right?
Yeah.
So, there's a lot of different ways, obviously. So walk me through that kind of thought process and maybe how that's grown over the years.
It did evolve significantly. So my initial strategy was I did personal training and group classes. And for a while it was mostly group classes, and then after maybe a year or two it shifted to almost all personal training sessions, or small or like 2 or 3 people sessions. And so that was how I made money. And I was actually doing very well for a personal trainer. I had 30 sessions a week. My hourly rate was anywhere between $65 and $90. So I was doing pretty well as far as a personal trainer goes. But my plan was never to be a personal trainer. My plan was always to do what I'm doing right now with Manful Yoga. But to get there, I didn't quite know what I was going to do. So I experimented with the different things. I started by creating single programs and then selling them. And of course, to have an audience to sell them to, I put a ton of time and energy into my Facebook page, into my YouTube channel. And the goal was just to put out as much content as possible and create a brand. And the goal wasn't even, when you look at it, if you were looking at it from a business lens and you were experiencing business, you would look at it and you would say, this guy's like, he's making a brand. I didn't know what that meant. I had no clue. But then I would have people come in and they say, like, you have a really strong brand. I'm like, really? I didn't even know I was doing that. That's great. But yeah, my goal was to just create as much content as possible and reward people for being on my email list and, being subscribers, and just try to build as much of an audience as possible. Because again, keep in mind, when I started the YouTube channel and the Facebook page and stuff, the goal wasn't, it was a hobby. I never thought that it would be, my full-time job. And people would even ask me like, so is this your full-time job? I'm like, no way. And then even when it was my full-time job, people would ask me, what do you do? And I would kind of laugh and jokingly say, I run this company called Manful Yoga. Like, it was almost a joke to me. And it took a while. And even in my filming style, I was kind of apprehensive or maybe a little embarrassed to put out videos where I was doing yoga. I guess I don't.
Do you think that's because it's not a traditional business way of making money? Because it sounded like earlier, like you were worried about going on for your own, being an entrepreneur, and because it wasn't a normal 9-to-5 job.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it was partly that when I told people like I run a yoga company, I thought that it didn't sound like legitimate to me. But the other part of it was, this is still yoga. And to me, I was still and am still the athlete, weightlifter, that type of trainer. Mm-hmm. So yoga was still like, yeah, I do yoga and it's good, but it's yoga. Right. And now my license plate says man yoga. So if you see a man yoga license plate, that's probably me.
That's awesome.
So I have like no apprehension about, no embarrassment whatsoever about being a guy that does yoga now or teaching yoga for men. But I think back then I did still have a lot of apprehension about it.
And do you think that changed the apprehension to the almost the excitement to put it on your license plates? Do you think that was because of X number of users? Do you think it was because of time? What legitimized it in your brain, do you think?
I think over time, I just got more comfortable with doing it. I think my experience with practicing yoga and my experience with working out with yoga and developing this brand just removed any subconscious barriers I had or the stigmas that were associated with it. And I encounter those stigmas, that's the whole, I encounter that all the time,
even probably daily.
Yeah. But yeah, I even had them. I had my own subconscious stigmas that I had to overcome, but yeah, eventually I did. And here we are.
I love it.
So,
So why man flow yoga instead
manful
of
yoga.
just flow yoga?
So yeah, the man thing, and I get this question a lot, and I think people misunderstand. People think that it's 2020, which means um, I mean I get accused of toxic masculinity, which is really funny to me because if you look at any of my blogs, or you read anything, um, that's just not who I am. The reason why man flow yoga and not gender neutral or binary, I don't know, yoga is because if you go to a yoga class and you're a guy and you try to do what a girl is doing, what the typical female in yoga class is doing, you can't do it. And the reason is because men have different bodies than women. Men are less flexible. It's not a generalization. It's an anatomical reality. Men are less flexible. They did not evolve to give birth. So their hips are not as flexible. Their joints are not as loose. They are not as flexible as women. The other part of it is men and women have different centers of gravity. So if you look at the way that men and women do yoga, especially when they're beginners, they have different tendencies. So men will rely more on their upper body strength. Women will rely more on their core strength and their hip strength. And this means that men and women make common errors differently. And so the intention behind Manful Yoga is partly because there is a difference between men and women. The other part of it is the other part of it is men don't feel comfortable doing yoga because it is seen as a primarily female dominant activity. And so my whole goal was to create a brand that said, hey guys, here's a normal guy doing yoga. His goals are similar to what most men have, which is building strength, building muscle, feeling strong, feeling capable, building athleticism if that's what you want to do, but and building a strong physique. And that was what I wanted to create. I wanted to create that image of a guy doing yoga, focusing on the typical man's physical fitness goals.
So I'm like nodding and about all these areas that you're talking about because flexibility is way different for me. I have probably different goals than most people would go if I go do yoga. And I think I have a tougher time just being a man and who likes to go to the gym to lift weights than a lot of other people. I also, because I'm a big marketing person, I also sit there and say, well, all yoga is a little bit more feminine. So it makes sense to niche it up. Like it just makes it easier to pitch people when you kind of get in a little bit more of a niche as opposed to just being general. So, I mean, to me, it makes sense in a lot of different ways, but all right. So what's some positives that you have when you go out? Like, do you think that you're calling it Manflow Yoga gives you an advantage over other yoga teaching studios or online services?
I think it definitely helps to differentiate because Manful Yoga is not just yoga. And we've gotten to the point now where there are two types of yoga. There is yoga in the traditional sense, excuse me, where it is a philosophy, where it's a lifestyle, where it is based on subcontinent Indian subcontinent philosophy. Um, and there's the other half, which is this is the yoga that is practiced at gyms. This is yoga. This is yoga as a system of physical postures, breathing exercises, and sometimes meditation. And I actually looked this up 2 weeks ago because I launched a new ad on Facebook and I specifically called out to people looking for non-spiritual yoga. And there were so many comments from angry yogis saying cannot be yoga has to be spiritual. If it's not spiritual, it's not yoga. And And so I looked, so I thought to myself, okay, I'm I'm not special. There are other people like me. So there must be a reason why I'm saying yoga and not implying spiritual. And so I looked up the dictionary. I went to the dictionary website, Merriam-Webster, and I looked at yoga. And there were these two definitions. One is the philosophy. One is basically a form of fitness practice for wellness. And um, what was the question again?
No, I don't know, but I love it. I was going to actually, my next question was going to talk about religion and spirituality.
Okay.
So you're actually completely
Yeah.
covering it. So do you get a lot of pushback
Oh,
there on the spirituality sense then?
We were talking about the Manful Yoga brand.
Oh yeah,
name.
sure.
So does it help call out to men specifically?
Yeah.
Right. So Manful Yoga is a pronoun. That's how I like to look at it. It is a system of fitness that is based on yoga, but it also includes bodyweight exercises, includes a lot of physical therapy like exercises. So it is familiar to yoga, but it is not traditional yoga. It's so people say, is this true yoga? I'm like, well, it's called Manful Yoga. It's somewhat like it includes inspiration from yoga and includes a lot of things that you'll see in yoga, but it is, I don't know, I hate the phrase it is what it is, but it is what it is.
There's a lot of different ways of working out, right?
Yeah.
And same with any exercise. So, okay.
The spiritual thing.
Yeah, well, yeah, I think actually let's dive a little deeper into that because that is something that's interesting, like the spirituality with yoga, and you guys, you have the absence of spirituality, correct?
Right.
In your system. So walk me through. You already kind of started on that. Maybe just give me a little bit more detail of why you decided that.
Yeah.
and how you guys do it.
I'm a lifelong athlete. I've been working out since I was 4. I've done soccer. I did swimming. I worked out at the gym. I've lifted weights. I did like bodybuilding like programs. I've played baseball, basketball, lacrosse, floor hockey, wrestling. I've done as many sports as CrossFit. I've done as many types of fitness as I can. And one thing that all of these things have in common is they're not spiritual. You're there and you're involved in the activity, but there's no mention of spirituality when you're like, imagine going to the gym, right? You go to the gym for your normal workout and you finish your first set and then you om, right? Does that make like,
yeah, it's actually funny when you look at that, think about it that way.
That's how I think of it.
Yeah, sure.
That's literally how I think of it. This is, for me, yoga was a workout. Yoga continues to be a workout. It's a system of fitness. There is not, the spiritual aspects don't even register. It's, people ask, why don't you include spirituality? I'm like, that's because it doesn't, it's a workout. This is not a spiritual thing. And a lot of people who practice yoga, that is their first experience with physical fitness. And so they draw an association between practicing spirituality and movement. And a lot of people say you cannot move without being spiritual, and if that's your experience, then that's fine. But as an athlete, that's not my experience. When I move, I want to be sure that I'm using proper technique so that I'm not only getting the most effective workout, but also I'm avoiding injury. And whenever you move, if you don't pay attention to your technique, you can risk injury. You can risk developing poor movement patterns that will eventually lead to injury. And so, whether for whatever reason you're doing yoga, if you're moving and you're not paying attention to your technique or you don't have proper technique, you are potentially setting yourself up for injury. And so that's why Manful Yoga, we focus on the technique. So all of that space that we could be using to talk about, and if you had an altercation with someone today, I want you to just breathe and let it go, or whatever, whatever typical yoga is, and you would hear. Instead, I'm saying, make sure that your knee is in this position and then squeeze your glutes to make sure that you're using your glutes and supporting your low back. So it's all focused on the physical explanation and what you should be feeling, what you shouldn't be feeling, how this translates into your physical fitness.
That's a great use of time. And they're different. There's a place and time for everything, I think. So what about struggles with working with men?
hmm I mean, I think the biggest struggles are actually just in the conversion aspect. Um, I say conversion as a marketing term. I
Mhm.
don't say conversion as like we're converting you to manful yoga, and you will eat grass fed beef with every meal.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, no, I could see that because you have to sell them almost twice. You have to sell them on yoga, and then you have
mhm.
to sell them on your program.
Yeah, and usually that happens by first pointing out, yeah, this isn't spiritual. This is just a workout. Also, a lot of yoga is not appropriate for men. And that's something that's actually, I truly do believe a lot of yoga is not appropriate for men because if you are not teaching the proper technique and if you are not accounting for that difference in flexibility, then a lot of guys will go into yoga classes and they'll end up hurting themselves. And then they'll say, oh, I went to yoga, but I couldn't do any of the poses and I felt, super unmotivated. And so, I think I wrote a blog, a beast of a blog, like I think it's like 35,000 words or something like that. It's a book. And I talked about, is yoga good for men? And at the top of that paragraph, I say, it can be, but only if it is appropriate for men. There are a lot of postures, there are a lot of sequences that are not appropriate for men. If they're not focusing on the proper muscles to engage, if you're putting your spine in excessive flexion, which means if you're rounding your back significantly, then that's something that leads to herniated disc. That's reinforcing the issues that we have with sitting at a desk all day. So it's yeah. So the first part is I'm a guy. I don't need to do yoga. I want to weightlift. Okay, cool. Well, I do yoga because I also enjoy weightlifting and I want to continue to be healthy and I want to get better at weightlifting and I want to get better at the sports that I play. And manful yoga helps guys because it gives them modifications because they're less flexible. We avoid postures that are totally inaccessible to the typical guy, and we focus on those aspects of fitness that most guys are interested in when we're talking about the postures and how that fits within the context of fitness for guys.
Right. So you mentioned before you did a lot of personal training,
hmm
and so whether you talk about revenue or time, what percentage is now doing? I don't know whether it's online subscriptions or online services versus actually in person
hmm
physical stuff.
3%. 3% of maybe 2 or 3% is from direct interaction, and everything else is from the online subscriptions. So yeah.
And walk me through that journey of how you went from, because to me the online's so much more scalable, right?
Yeah.
And it makes so much sense. If I was ever in the fitness world, that's exactly where I would go, is some form of video service. Walk me through. Okay, you're making good money. You're booked
hmm
physically, and then you went into the online space.
So again, the intention was always to get into the online space and make it scalable, so to speak. I don't think I knew the word back then. And then once I figured it out, I probably went full Tim Ferriss for like 2 years and only talked about things in terms of scalability and life purpose and providing value. And then
Yeah.
I saw one episode of Silicon Valley and I was
Uh,
like, that's
That
hilarious.
was me, right?
Um,
No, but I
yeah.
mean, your whole story has been providing value the whole time. Like
Mhm.
that was your initial intention with your lacrosse teammates.
Yeah.
But continue.
So yeah, the goal was to always create a brand. Part of that was also I just didn't want to interact with people all day. That was too draining for me. I like being on my own and creating things, but being with people all day would be challenging. So my initial strategy was I'm going to take all the money that I make from personal training and put it into this online thing. So for a while, I was basically just funding this thing that ate money and did nothing. Um, and the whole goal with what I was doing was to create this huge base of potential customers. And I did that by creating ebooks, by creating YouTube content, creating Facebook content. Um, eventually, I got. Eventually, I also started working with a DVD company, and I created a series of DVDs called Body by Yoga, and surprisingly, people still buy DVDs. That we've sold, I think we've sold at this point probably over 35 or 40,000 DVDs.
Wow.
And there's people who buy, yeah. So there are people who are buying DVDs. Um, and my strategy has always been, let's create as many low cost entry items as possible. So DVDs, ebooks. I eventually got a book deal with DK Publishers and wrote a book called Yoga Fitness for Men, which is extremely popular now in 4 different languages. It'll be translated into Mandarin pretty soon,
Wow.
and it's still number one in multiple categories on Amazon UK. And it was number one new release on Amazon US, and in multiple categories. And um, so it did very well, and it continues to do very well. But these things on their own are nowhere near enough to actually support, a business. But the goal was always to create these these high quality lead generation tools, and that's exactly how I approach a lot of things in life. My system is to overly prepare before going into something, and then even as you're going into it, to constantly replenish. Like, think of did you ever used to play computer games like Age of Empires or
Oh,
like
of
Age
course. I still
Okay,
play it every once in a while.
perfect. So like, my strategy was to build up an army, and then by the time I had ransacked or whatever, destroyed the other opponents, all of their buildings, I had already had a full army ready,
To
like
go.
on top of
Yeah.
that.
My strategy, not to diverge too much, is I hated any of my guys dying. So I always had like either amazing defenses and multiple walls.
Yeah.
And then I also like always over prepared as well. So
Yeah.
because I didn't want them to die. Like
Right.
I was trying to like minimize my losses at all times.
Yeah.
Which is a funny way. Okay.
So the
So you-
over preparing strategy, that was how I created all those things.
which I
That's
love.
why.
So since you have all these different areas and you're probably constantly scheming, trying to figure out the next version or next thing you're doing, walk me through maybe a normal day in your life. Like, how do you decide what to do? What's your morning routines? That type of thing.
Do I have my? I don't have my index cards with me. I write an index card with the to-do list every day. In one column, I put if I have a schedule, if I have any appointments. In one column, I put personal things that I want to do. So if I need to like go buy something from Costco, or if I need to, what's my workout going to be that day, or if I need to do something else. And then I'll write in the other column, in the primary column, I'll write what are the things that I need to do today for my business. I try to create a weekly to-do list at the beginning of the week, so I kind of know. And sometimes I'll also create an index card with days on them and columns for each day, if there are specific things on each day. So that's how I.
And how many items are on these index cards?
On a good day, there's 3. On like a typical day, there's 8 things
Oh, wow, okay.
that I will, that are always reach goals.
And why do you write them out as opposed to have them on your phone or on your laptop? Or
I like writing things out. I don't know what it is, and this is what I teach with people too, is I like writing things out. I think it makes it more real. I also don't like getting on my phone. So the more that I can like grab a physical reference, like if I can have just a note card in my pocket, I'd much rather grab that. I'm also a very dopamine motivated individual. So crossing something
Yeah.
off a list is huge for me.
I also think it's nice to download it out of your brain, and writing it
Yeah.
down for some reason is a really good way of sitting there saying, okay, it's written down. I don't have to think about it anymore. It's there. I can look at it when I need to. I don't have to constantly do the on repeat in your brain, right?
It's my own pensive. Like Dumbledore had a pensive, right? He took it from his brain and put it in.
That's right. Yeah. Getting obscure as we can.
Yes. Scare references. I haven't told you about like what's the actual business. I've told you like about the like.
Yeah, actually, yeah.
generation
Let's
stuff.
jump into that. I love that. That's a great place to go.
Okay. I felt like we were heading there. So, again, for like 2014, 2015, 2013, my main business strategy was create programs and sell them to my existing email list. And that was okay. I would make a couple grand or a few grand at most, maybe like $2,000 to I think maybe $3,000 at most when I launched a program, and we sold them for 25, $30. And so we get a bunch of customers, but then that program would be done. And then I have to spend a few more months creating another program, and thinking about, okay, I need to pay whoever it is to make the art for this. And then I need to pay a videographer for this. And it wasn't like there was no, I was breaking even on things. And which was back then, breaking even on something was a success. Like, hey, we didn't lose money on this. Yay. But that wasn't sustainable. And then all of a sudden, inspiration struck me in like 2015 November, and I don't know what it was. Maybe I saw other people doing it, or maybe you know, but I realized that all of the content that I created was focused on improving your yoga workouts. But the one thing I wasn't providing was consistent yoga workouts. So I thought, okay, well, I basically need to make a members area, right? I need to make it something where I upload new workouts every month, where people, are either monthly or annual or whatever it is, subscribers, so that I have dependable income. And that's going to be my project. And so I spent that entire month, probably a month and a half, just all of my time and energy filming workouts, setting up this members area. And I remember in January, I looked down at my phone and I was checking sales, and I started seeing annual sales come in. Like, is this real? Are people actually paying me people are paying me for a year in advance for something? And then I waited a few days. I'm definitely like a credit card company is going to call me, or like they're going to email and they say like, I didn't actually want to buy this. And it didn't come. And that was when I realized, wow, this is a product that's actually going to work. And so at that point, I switched most of my energy into the members area. And that has been my product ever since. That's the best way for me to interact with the community, to create workout programs, because people ask me questions. People who are customers ask me questions all the time, like, Dean, what do I do for knee pain? I'm like, program for that. I've built a program for that. Here it is. Or like, Dean, I need to get rid of my back pain right away. I'm like, here's a workout for that. It's right here. And so it was this very easy way for people to get the solutions for what they were looking for, all in one place.
So I have so many questions related to the membership approach. And I think a lot of people get a lot of value out of this. So how do you decide to create a new, I don't want to call it system, but a new program? Like, okay,
Yeah.
how do you come up with these things?
Sure. So I have my ear to the ground, so to speak, with my members. We do a lot of surveys. Every few months, we do what's called member talks, and we'll set up. We'll block off afternoons and put 15-minute blocks. Ask our members specific questions. So we know a lot about our members. We know why they've signed up for Manful Yoga. We know that they're there because they're looking for non-spiritual yoga that's focused on men, that's focused on guys who are not as flexible, who are new to yoga, who are looking for yoga as a functional fitness system to enable them to do what they physically want to do without pain and without having to worry about injury. We know that that's our customer. And so it's part of it is listening to them. Part of it is also kind of listening to Google and listening to YouTube. And I don't do any of that. I am not the analytics guy. Fortunately, we do have a guy who does all of that, and he says we need to create content for this. And I'm like, okay, fine, good idea, let's do it. But it's a lot of just listening to the customers, and looking at stats and looking at playback rates and seeing, oh wow, like people actually do this entire workout. They do 76% of this workout. Whereas with this routine, people are only doing, 26% of the workout or 50% of the workout. So, we kind of realized that most of our guys are busy guys. They're either dads or they're busy professionals. They're in their 40s, 50s, 60s. We do have a lot of people in their 30s, a few in their 20s, and then guys in their 70s as well. But they want a quick, efficient workout. They want intense. They want a good workout. They want to feel accomplished at the end of it. And they also want to be able to notice the results like immediately. They want to get rid of their back pain. They want to feel energetic. They don't want to have their joints feeling in pain and broken the next day. There are other types of guys who are looking more sadistic type guys who do want to feel awful after their workout.
Yeah.
But these guys have often been there already and realized or come to the conclusion for themselves that this is not a sustainable thing for me and I don't want to do that. Um, so for our guys, much more important than like getting a six pack and getting ripped is just feeling physically strong and physically comfortable. So based on understanding our customers, we've created things and also thinking about an avatar in particular. So picking out one guy and then thinking this is what you need to do and building it into a system. That's how it's a combination of that.
It's a very common approach that I have to marketing is pitch to one person,
Mm-hmm.
specifically talk to them, and then broaden out. How do you come up with pricing? It's always tough, isn't it?
I think we've just kind of landed on certain prices. I I am not the budget company because I do provide support to my customers. Like if they email me and ask questions, I'm not just going to direct them to the help desk. I'm actually going to respond to them. So I've kind of experimented with prices and then looking at the types of customers that I get with certain prices. So I've found that, pricing the things out the way they are now, I'm able to have customers who are satisfied with the products and um, also do not give me a headache. So, we found that the customers at, whatever prices they are, this works for allowing me to continue to create content. We might not get as many customers as we possibly could, but I also don't have 350 emails to respond to every day. So this is, and people are buying it. We do hear from some people who say that this is too expensive for me. I can't do this. And, I don't know if we're, short of dropping the prices tremendously, I don't know if we're going to be able to appeal to everybody. Um, but I think that pricing too low gives off the wrong impression. I think that for what we provide and the amount of thought that goes into these programs, all of the customer research that we do and the fact that I create very comprehensive programs. So whenever I create a program, have you read the perennial bestseller?
I have not, no.
Okay, so this is Ryan Holiday's book about basically how to create content that lasts. I love that book. I had subconsciously been utilizing a lot of its principles beforehand. Um, but basically, I have a system for creating programs. And the first part of it is why the hell would anybody pay attention to this? Why should anyone care about this? Right? Because it's not just this is a program for hip flexibility. Why? Why does anyone care about hip flexibility? So it has to address a lot of these questions. It has to address counter questions. It has to have content built into it to address these counter questions. So the contents that the content that I create is super comprehensive and that is valuable. So I don't sell things, as cheap as you might see on other websites because I do put a lot of, there's a ton of thought and there's a ton of time that goes into it. It's not just something we throw together. So if that
I know it makes complete sense.
answers,
A lot of takeaways there. One, that book sounds also like it'd work for copywriting as well.
yeah.
To me, you want customers that are also serious, that's going to do your service,
Mhm.
and they need that skin in the game.
Yes.
Also, I just have another follow-up question on that is, do you have any fear with putting your prices out there, with changing prices, new programs?
I used to. I did. I mean, our programs now, they usually come out around $50. But when I was first starting out and when I was first starting to sell things, there was fear. And there were people who were like, oh, I just, they wanted,
Free.
yeah, they wanted free. They were the Choosing Beggars is a fantastic Reddit thread that I don't even get on Reddit, but Choosing Beggars is fantastic. Just if you
I'll
want
have
to
to
get
check that
lost on
out.
YouTube for a day,
Yeah.
Choosing Beggars. But yeah, there are a lot of people who are disappointed that, this is free. Yoga is supposed to be free. I'm like, cool. Well, my time is valuable. Also, videographers are not free. Renting the space that we film this in is not free. So while you may have lofty, selfless, I don't know what to call it, ideals
Uh,
about, you know,
yeah, I just,
yeah,
yeah, you just don't want it. It's wasted energy even thinking about it.
yeah,
What about software for a membership program? Say somebody want to get something going. Is there
yeah.
anything that you like that you've used that you enjoy?
If I could do it again, I would honestly have just done a pre-built template. But we have a WordPress based website
Mhm.
and it's completely custom. We have custom filters, we have custom categories, we have custom everything. So our workouts, a lot of members areas for particularly for video content are kind of structured like Netflix. You have playlist and playlist and playlist, and and that's pretty much it. Ours is completely custom built. You can look for your workouts based on not only duration or text search, but also on skill level, fitness focus. So if you want to do like hips, core, or sorry, that's target area, hips, core, shoulders, or fitness focus. So if you want to work on flexibility or balance or strength or endurance, and then intensity level, because skill and intensity is not the same thing. So we have tons of filters that we've built in, and there's just tons of customization that we built. But our stack is a WordPress site. We use Infusionsoft for our CRM, and then we plug that together with Memberium, and we use a service called Wistia
Mhm.
for our video streaming. We were using Vimeo for a while, but we got a lot of complaints about buffering, and just video stopping and not playing. So, which was kind of funny because people said that they would be in a pose and then it would pause, and then like a minute later they'd still be in the pose, and then they'd look back at the screen.
Wait a second.
Yeah,
That's
so it was a
that's
great
hilarious.
workout. Yeah,
What about any mentors along the way or before you started that came along? Any or you've mentioned a couple books. Anything in that area?
there's not one person who really stuck out to me. And I've done enough reading and enough involvement in kind of this in the personal develop world that a lot of content is just recycled and kind of ideas that have already been created. So no one really comes to mind with in terms of mentors. And most of what I've learned has been through reading. I like Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. Um, yeah, I nailed that pronunciation, by the way. Flow, The Psychology of Optimal Experience is a fantastic book. Um, I like Ryan Holiday's books. I think they're just fun to read. Um, Another favorite book is Stephen McCovey, Seven Highly Habits of Effective People. Um,
I haven't read that one in a while. I got that downstairs. So I need to
it's
reread that one.
it's always good to reread that.
Yeah, I love those. I love those that you could just jump
Mhm.
right back in. And some a book like that, a lot of times you can just, I'm just going to read chapter 5 or whatever. Sometimes
Yeah,
you could just jump in the middle.
yeah.
What does success look like for you?
Success for me um, looks like predictable income and enough to enough to support my lifestyle without having to worry about things. That's a big part of it. The other part, from outside my own personal perspective, I guess would be, or I guess outside my immediate needs, would be being seen as the authority on yoga fitness for men. And I did write the book on yoga fitness for men, so we're off to a good start there. And that book is, I think it's number one if you search yoga for men. Like that's the book that comes up,
Great.
which is great. But so being seen as an authority, being seen as someone like, if people say, "Have you tried yoga?" and they say, "No, I don't want to do yoga," and then the counter response is, "Yeah, but have you tried man flow yoga?" Yeah.
Love it.
Um,
So what does your future hold? Like, what's your?
my future. I'm not good at my long term plans. Definitely the website and the members area is something that we're going to keep doing. the things that we haven't branched out into doing more is we actually don't do any sort of collaborations with people, very minimal, which is weird because if you look at almost all startups that are kind of doing what I'm doing, it's all about collaborations. And we've always, or my strategy has always been to stay in my office and create really good content. And that's been like what I do. But something that we haven't done, we need to branch out into referral programs. We need to do way more with collaborations. Um,
I think collaborations would be huge because
Yeah.
you get their whole network, to
right.
come in.
Yeah.
They can be expensive or they could be free depending on the person too. But
Yeah.
I think you'll figure out what makes sense.
And it's so easy for us because man flow yoga is something that can be combined with other types of fitness. I don't recommend that people only do man flow yoga. And when people tell me I'm only doing your workouts, I'm like, yeah, but I told you, you need to do pulling exercises too, or your shoulders are going to get messed up, or you need to do wrist strengthening because your wrists are going to start hurting if all you do is yoga. So, I see a tremendous opportunity for people to integrate man flow yoga with other workout programs. So that's something. Um, we have books already. We have DVDs. We have a really good yoga mat on Amazon, which is which is usually the number one result for Cork yoga mat. But it is currently sold out. We'll be launching yoga blocks, yoga knee pads, foam rollers, straps, all that kind of stuff is coming up. So
because you kind of got this great vision into the men yoga users. So it makes so much sense that you're creating these products and services and books and all this around it because they're basically telling you whether they're telling you actually by calling or emailing you, or they're telling you by their actions, how long they're staying on different programs. It's kind of a fantastic way. You're getting a lot of data there, a lot of data points. What would you title this chapter in your life?
Growth.
Love it.
Not scaling, but like, I don't know, the next level, I guess. Like 5 years ago, when I first thought of doing what I was going to do with Manflow Yoga, this is what I had envisioned. Like, I'm going to be running a website, or I'm going to be like running an online brand. I'm going to have a pretty good level of success. I'm going to have, 3 to 5 people working for me, but I didn't think beyond that. So I still am, I'm still trying to figure out what does the next 3 to 5 years look like. So, I don't know how much, to what extent I believe in, visualizing where you're going to be 3 to 5 years from now, and then taking steps to get there. My thought has always been much more, we need to figure out, we don't need to set a goal for ourselves. Like, the goal is not to make $100,000 a month. The goal is to figure out how to reach as many people as possible. And if that number is 80,000, great. But if that number is above 100,000, then why are we limiting ourselves? The goal is to do as much as we possibly can, to reach as many people, to get as many people as we possibly can doing these programs.
I love it. I think the key to happiness is growth. In personal or business or anything. I think that you kind of have to have that. And why not reach out to as many people as you can, right?
Yeah.
So what about, is there any like common bad recommendations out there about yoga that you just hear all the time and you cringe a little bit?
Just do what feels good. There are certain phrases, or like, just listen to your body. A lot of people who are doing yoga have no experience with fitness. They don't know what listen to my body means. They don't know what just feels good means. So I see a lot of yoga instructors giving advice, like these things that sound great, but that are terrible in terms of physical fitness advice. Because a lot of people just don't know what feels good with their body. A lot of people don't intuitively have that knowledge because they haven't been, working out. They're not athletes. So, really bad advice that I hear with yoga instructors is general phrases that are kind of airy, that don't actually apply to physical fitness.
That makes complete sense.
What about, doesn't really apply to business?
But yeah, right. No, I like it. No, that's actually what I meant.
Okay.
What about walking me back when you got your first like online customer paying you? Like, how did that feel? Like, how'd that happen? Did that make it seem real? I'm sure it was a small amount, but like, walk me back to that day, if you remember even.
I don't know if I even remember. I think launching the members area was, I think that moment when we were launching the members area and we actually started keep having people sign up for like a year in advance. Um, and then not only after that launch, because I had been used to people buying like things and like, buying things in spurts, like sales would look like, "Ooh," and then I go back down to zero a week later.
Mhm.
Um, but seeing people buying the same product that I had launched like a month or two ago, and then people continuing to buy that product, that was for me, that was like the big moment of, oh wow, this is what it really means to have like an online business.
Yeah, it's
When
real.
yeah, that was the moment for me.
All right. Well, last question. How would you like to be remembered?
I would like to be remembered as oh man. I would like to be remembered as um who who cared deeply, and also people were people could tell that I made the extra effort for people. That I try to go that I try to go above and beyond to make that, that extra thoughtful action. Um, at least that's how I'd like to be remembered around people who are close to me. And then professionally, I'd like to be, remembered as the guy who helped make um, this form of fitness more accessible to people who otherwise would not have done it. But yeah, I think that that first part of I would like people to recognize that I put in the extra effort. I think that's, and just being acknowledged for that. I think that would be that would be swell.
I love
Yeah.
it. All right, Dean. Well, it was a big pleasure to have you on the podcast. I really appreciate it, man.
Yeah,
All
thank
right,
you.
cheers.
Thanks for having me.